Hello, my name is Ms. March and I will be teaching the math portion of this review. The most important thing to remember is that this test is timed. So for the math section, you have 20 minutes to answer 45 math questions. I can't tell you how many questions you need to get correct to get a passing score of 210 because there's different levels. Level 1 questions are the easiest, worth the least amount of points. Level 2, a little bit harder, worth more. Level 3 are the hardest, worth the most. So it's whatever combination gets you to a score of 210. Each section of the test is out of 500 points, so 210 does not seem so bad. Remember, in the back of the book that you get to take home, there's an answer key, and it gives you the level of each question. Okay, open your quantitative Form A booklets to page 1, the second page in. Let's look at question number 5. 437 times 7. 7 times 7 is 49. We carry the 4. 7 times 3 is 21, plus 4 is 25. 7 times 4, 28, plus 2, 30. Our answer is 3,059, choice C. Let's look now at number 6. 280 divided by 8. 8 can't go into 2, it can go into 28. Now we're going to look at our answer choices. The first number is either a 3 or a 4. What's closer? 3. 3 times 8 is 24. We subtract. We have 4 left over. We bring down the 0. 8 goes into 40 exactly 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. Our answer is 35, choice A. Now 7 through 12 are also level 1 questions. Some of them are really easy, so we'll just go over how you would solve them. 7 says, Elena worked 38 hours last week and 36 hours this week. How many hours did she work in the 2 weeks? We need a total, so we're going to add. Question number 8. An electronics store had 182 customers on Thursday, 443 on Friday, 509 on Saturday. How many customers did the store have in those 3 days? Again, we need a total, so you're going to add. Question number 9 says Susanna earned $65 in tips on Friday. She gave $18 of the tips to the busboy. How much did she have left? Because it says how much did she have left, we know that we need to subtract. 65 minus 18. You can't do 5 minus 8. You need to borrow from the 6 and make it a 5. And carry 10. So now 15 minus 8 is 7. 5 minus 1 is 4. So Susanna would have $47 left. Choice B. Question 10 is similar to 9. So we're going to skip that. Question 11 says, each box below contains 14 hammers. In total, how many hammers are contained in the boxes? Well, there's 5 boxes. So we're going to multiply 14 times 5. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So there are 70 hammers, choice B. 12 is also similar to 11, so we're going to skip it. We're moving on to questions 13 through 20, which are level 2 questions. So level 2 are considered a little bit harder. Let's look at 13. 683 divided by 8. 8 can't go into 6, it can go into 68. I look at my answer choices, and the first number is either 8 or 7. What works better? 8. 8 is closer. 8 times 8 is 64. We subtract. We have 4 left over. We bring down the next number. 8 goes into 43. Closest is 5. 5 times 8 is 40. And we have 3 left over. 85, remainder 3, choice B. Question 14, 304 divided by 23. 23 can't go into 3, it can go into 30 one time. 1 times 23 is 23. We can't do 0 minus 3, we borrow. This becomes a 2, and now we have 10 minus 3, 7. We bring down the next number. We look at the answer choices. The next number is either 2 or 3. I like to round this. I make it 20. 20 times 2 is 40, not even close. 20 times 3, 60, much closer. So I automatically know it's that answer choice that is C, 13, remainder 5, because it's the only 13. On the test, as soon as you know you have the answer, pick it, move on. No one's checking your work. But to finish it off, 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 2 is 6, so 3 times 23, we're subtracting 69. Can't do 4 minus 9. We borrow from the 7, it becomes a 6. 14 minus 9 is 5. 13, remainder 5 is our answer. One more division problem. 15, 272 divided by 64. 64 can't go into 2, can't go into 27. We got to figure out how many times it's going into 272. Most of the answer choices start with 4. One starts with a 3. So I'm going to try 64 times 4, because if it's too big and I can't subtract it, I automatically know the answer is B. 4 times 4 is 16. We carry the 1. 4 times 6, 24, plus 1, 25. Put a 4 up here. 4 times 64 is that 256. I can't do 2 minus 6. I borrow from the 7. 12 minus 6 is 6. 6 minus 5 is 1. 64 can't go into 16, and I have no more numbers to bring down. So at this point, we have to add a decimal and a 0. Think of money. You can write $5 this way, or with the decimal. Same amount. I bring down my 0, and now it's 64 into 160. I look at the next numbers of those answer choices that start with 4. The next number has to be either a 2, a 5, or a 7. I make this 60. 60 times 2 is 120. It's not that close, but 60 times 5? Well, 6 times 5 is 30, and we add a 0 to the end. 300, way too big. I automatically know my answer choice is A now, because it's the only one that's 4.2. But to finish the question off, 64 times 2 gives us 128. So I'm subtracting 128 here. Again, I can't do 0 minus 8. I borrow. 10 minus 8 is 2. 5 minus 2 is 3. And I would add another 0 and bring it down. 64 goes into 320 exactly 5 times. 5 times 64 is 320. Now, moving on to everyone's favorite, fractions. Okay, now we're going to look at question 16, 1/5 plus 1/7. Whenever we're adding or subtracting fractions, we need a common denominator. The quickest, fastest way is to take our bottom numbers and multiply them. 5 times 7 is 35. Multiplying our bottom numbers will always work. It might not always give you the lowest common denominator, but it's the quickest way. We're concerned about time on this test. So we set both fractions equal to 35 on the bottom. 5 times what gives you 35? The other number, 7. Whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. Below, 7 times what gives us 35? The other number, 5. Whatever I do on the bottom, I do on the top. I add the top numbers and keep the bottom number of 35. This is our final answer, choice A. Now sometimes we may get an answer like this, and it wouldn't be listed. There's a reason. This fraction can be simplified or reduced. So we're looking for one number that can divide evenly into both the top and the bottom. For even numbers, 2 always works. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 18 divided by 2 is 9. So this is the answer that would be listed. I'm telling you this because we may go through all these steps, get an answer, look down, and it's not there. It doesn't necessarily mean you did something wrong. It could be a clue that you need to reduce. Let's look at question 17. 17 is 1/6 plus 1/8. Again, first step, get a common denominator. Multiply your bottom numbers. 6 times 8 is 48. Set both fractions equal to 48. 6 times what gives you 48? 8. Whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. Down here, 8 times 6, the other number. Whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. We keep that 48, and we add. 8 plus 6 is 14. We look down at our answer choices. It's not listed. It's a clue we need to reduce. These are both even numbers, so 2 works. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 48 divided by 2 is 24. 7 over 24 is our final answer, choice C. Let's look at 18. 18 is a pretty easy question for our level 2. It says 15 over 21 is equal to. I'm looking for a number that can divide evenly into both the top and the bottom. These are not even numbers, so 2 is not going to work. I'll try 3. 3 goes into 15 evenly, and 3 goes into 21 evenly, so it works. 15 divided by 3 is 5. 21 divided by 3 is 7. 5 over 7 is my answer. Question 19 says 16 over 9 is equal to. 16 over 9 is an improper fraction. All improper fractions are going to equal mixed numbers, a whole number and a fraction. Just knowing that, I know B and C are not possible answer choices. The line in a fraction actually means to divide. So we're doing 16 divided by 9. 9 goes into 16 one time. 1 times 9 is 9. 16 minus 9, 7. 9 goes into 16 one full time. My remainder is 7. Bottom number stays the same. So our answer is 1 7/9, choice D. There's also a way to check this. We can move like this and multiply and add. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 7, 16. Bottom number stays the same. Now I got what I started with. Question 20 says, which of the following numbers is the smallest? And they're all fractions. If you can't eliminate answer choices, I would take a guess on this question. I wouldn't leave any questions blank. I try to make an educated choice, pick an answer, and if there's time left over, at the end of the test, after question 45, a screen comes up which lists all the numbers. I would go back to a question like this if I had time left over. So we have 3/7, 1/3, 5 over 6, and 9 over 14. We're looking for the smallest, so you can eliminate anything that's more than half. 5 out of 6, definitely more than half. Half of 6 is 3. 5 out of 6 is almost a whole. Gone. I can also eliminate choice D, 9 out of 14. Half of 14 is 7, so 9 out of 14 greater. So I have these two fractions, and you may have an idea, or you may know. Great. If you didn't, get a common denominator. Same thing as we were doing when we were adding the fractions, which is 21. 7 times 3 gives me 21. Whatever I do to the bottom, I do the top. Down here, 3 times 7. So I do 1 times 7. Now that they have the same denominator, I can compare the top numbers. Choice B is smaller. 7 out of 21 is less than 9 out of 21. Now I'm going to move on to question number 23. '23 says a company budgeted $3,050 to spend on advertising. So far, the company has spent $1,764.25 of the budget. How much money is left in the budget? By the words how much money is left, we know we need to subtract. We always put the larger number on top. In this case, it's the $3,050. But the other number has 2 decimal places. So when we add or subtract, it's important to line up decimals. You're always allowed to add a decimal and as many zeros as you need. Now, I can line up the numbers and subtract. I also like this question because there's a lot of borrowing going on. You can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. You really can't do 5 minus 6. A lot of people would start by borrowing from the 5, but I'm still going to have to borrow. We can't do this. We can do 3 minus 1, so I'll borrow. I'll make it in 2. But instead of making this a 10, I'm going to make it 1 less because I have to keep borrowing. So I make it a 9. Normally this would become a 15, but I have to keep borrowing. 1 less, a 14. Again, make this a 9, make this a 9, and give 10 to the last number. Now, you just subtract. 9 minus 4, 5. 14 minus 6, 8. 9 minus 7, 2. 2 minus 1, 1. So $1,285.75. Choice C. Let's look at question number 24. 24 says a nursery sells apple trees at $24.95 each. A landscaper bought 8 trees from the nursery. What was the total cost of the trees? So we'd multiply for this. $24.95 times 8. 8 times 5, 40. 0, I carry the 4. I'm done at this point, because if I look, choice A is the only one that ends in a 0. Besides that, if it's about $25 to buy 1 tree, how could 8 trees cost less? Look at choices C and D. They're less than the cost of 1 tree. Moving on, there's a harder problem. Question 26 is a level 3 question. It says a 6-foot-tall man is standing near a tree on level ground, as shown in the picture above. If the man's shadow is 4 feet long, how many feet tall is the tree? In your test booklets, or your practice booklets, write 6 feet next to the man. Now, we're comparing the man's height and his shadow to that of the tree's shadow and the tree's height. So what this means is there's some sort of relationship in common between the man and his shadow that the tree follows. So if I'm looking and the man's 6 feet and his shadow's 4 feet, I could say the man's a little bit taller than his shadow, which means the tree has to follow this pattern. It's not going to be the exact 2-foot difference, but the same idea. So the tree shadow's 18 feet. His actual height has to be a little bit larger than this number. Now I look at the answer choices. The only one that makes sense is choice A, 27 feet. That's the common sense way to solve this problem. The actual way to solve this problem would be to write out a proportion. The man is 6 feet, that's his actual height, and he has a 4-foot shadow. The other number we know is that the tree has an 18-foot shadow. We have to line up shadow with shadow. And we're looking for the actual height of the tree. So in math, when we have a proportion to solve, we cross multiply and then divide. So we're multiplying on our diagonals. 4 times x has to equal my other diagonal, 6 times 18. I can't actually multiply this, so it stays 4x. 6 times 18 is 108. Now we need to find out what just x equals. So this is saying 4 times x. We do the opposite. We divide each side by 4. 108 divided by 4. 4 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. We subtract. We bring down the next number. 4 goes into 28 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. X equals 27 feet. Okay, moving on to questions 27 through 29. On the test, you're going to see some sort of graph that they're going to ask you questions. Here we have a line graph. It may be a bar graph on the test, or a pie chart. But let's look at question 27. Question 27 says, about how many more jazz records were sold in April than in February? So we have to look at our chart and find out how many were sold in April. And it looks about 1,800. And I do the same for February. Now for February, it looks like it's in between 1,000 and 1,200. So we're going to say 1,100. We want to know how many more were sold in April than in February. So we're going to subtract, and we get 700. Now I look at my answer choices. The closest one is A, 750. On this type of question, you may not get the exact answer because the question said about. Moving on to question 28. 28 says 2% of the jazz records sold in April were from a new label. About how many records were from the new label? So we have to find out what 2% of 1,800 is. Now, by common sense, 2% is tiny. So I'm looking at my answer choices, and I would eliminate B, 800, and D, 400. But for this test, whenever they give you a percent, you're allowed to change it to a decimal and multiply. So if I don't see a decimal, it's behind the number, and we always move 2 places over to the left. So this equals 0.02. The word of in math means to multiply. So 1,800 times 0.02. 2 times 0 is 0. 0 again. 2 times 8, 16. I carry the 1. 2 times 1, 2, plus 1, 3. Notice I didn't line up the decimals. There's no need for multiplication. We count how many decimal places are here in the top, and that's how many decimal places we'll put in our answer. I start at the back, and I'm moving 2 places over. The closest to what I got of 36 is choice C, 40. So that's the correct answer. Now, this was just one step. Sometimes there may be an extra step. They could say you're buying a TV for $1,800, and there's a tax of 2%. Well, my first step is multiplication. This 36 would be the tax. If they ask for the total cost of the TV, my second step would be to add. Tax makes stuff more expensive. So 1,800 plus 36. They could also say I'm buying the same TV, but I'm getting a 2% discount. In that case, the $36 would be my discount, and I would subtract as my second step. If we turn the page, we're moving on to equations. All the equations on this test are considered level 3. A lot of people don't like the equations. But you have to promise me to do the question that looks like 30. Question 30, you could literally just plug in the answers and see what works. It says y minus 7 equals 8. When we're solving equations in math, it's always about the opposite operation. So I want to get y by itself, so I want to get rid of the minus 7. The opposite, plus 7. Whatever I do on one side of the equal sign, I have to do on the other. 8 plus 7 is 15, so y equals 15. As far as the other equations go, try to do them. If you know how to do them, go for it. The main thing to know about solving equations is you're always doing the opposite or inverse operation. So addition and subtraction are opposites. Multiplication and division are opposites. I wouldn't spend too much time on the equations if you're not sure. I'd take a guess and go back. But let's try one more. Let's try question 33. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to plug in 3 for x. When I plug it in, because they're next to each other, it means multiplication. So 5 times 3 gives me 15. Now whenever I'm solving an equation, Whatever's by the variable or the letter, I'm going to save to last. My first step is to get rid of this. So the opposite of plus 12 would be minus 12. Whatever I do on one side, I do on the other. So I'm left with 1/3 y squared equals 3. Now I've got to get rid of the 1/3. I know you may be thinking this is showing multiplication, and the opposite would be division. But division with fractions, there's a little trick to it. So there's a shortcut. Instead of dividing each side by 1/3, we're just going to multiply by what's called the reciprocal. We flip. Now if I multiplied this straight across, I'd end up with 3/3, which is 1, and cancels out. Whatever I do on one side, I do on the other. Here I'd really get 9/1. So I have y squared equals 9/1 is just 9. At this point, this means a number times itself gives you 9. It's really 3. 3 times 3 is 9. But the opposite of squaring is taking the square root. So y equals 3. Now I'd like you to turn your booklets to questions 39 through 41. Before we actually do these questions, I just want to go over a few things you need to know for the test. You need to know that all L-shaped angles are 90 degrees. And you may remember the little box in the corner. On this test, they don't put that box. So you see an L-shaped angle, think 90 degrees. All straight lines, 180 degrees. Circles, 360. Triangles, 180. Something else you should know. So let's say this is a picture of the in-ground pool that I really don't have, and I want to fill it with water. In math, when we're trying to find the inside of something, it's called volume. And it's really simple. Volume is length times width times height. So all I'm doing is 8 times 2 times 4. Remember, with multiplication, the order doesn't matter. So multiply whatever's easiest for you. For me, 2 times 4 is 8. And then 8 times 8 is 64. That's easier than doing 16 times 4. Every second counts. Now if you look in your booklets on that page, page 9, you see that you have a picture of circles and they give you formulas. You need to know the difference between circumference, and there's two formulas that they give you there, and area. You're going to remember C for circumference, C for crust to your regular piece of pie. Circumference is the edge going around the circle. Area is the hole inside. Now they give you two formulas for circumference because you can have a diameter, which would go all the way across the circle, or you can have a radius, which starts at the center and goes to the edge. If I double my radius, it equals my diameter. So these formulas are the same. But, as you can see in our booklet, it will tell you whether it's a radius or a diameter. So you just pick which formula you need to use. Now let's look at question 39. 39 says, Pete is designing a company logo by dividing a circle into 5 equal pie-shaped sections as shown in the diagram above. How many degrees are in angle A? Well, I look at the shape, it's a circle, and I know a circle has 360 degrees. He's dividing into 5 equal sections, so it's 360 divided by 5. 5 can't go into 3, it goes into 36 7 times. 7 times 5 is 35. I have one left over. At this point, really, if I'm looking at my answer choices, I already know it's B, because it's the only one that starts with the 7. But I bring down the 0, 5 goes into 10 2 times. So my answer is 72 degrees. Now with the next two questions, we have to decide whether it's area or circumference. Two different situations. Let's say I had a circular room and I want to put carpet down on the floor. That's area because carpet covers the whole floor. Let's say I had a circular garden and I want to put a fence around it. That's circumference because it's going around. So now let's look at question 40. 40 says, Pete plans to put silver color ribbon around the circular logo. About how many inches of silver colored ribbon will he need? Well, he's putting ribbon around it. So that's circumference. And I look at my circle and it has a radius. So I choose the formula that has the R in it. Now I just plug in numbers. 2. This symbol is pi, and they tell us to use 3.14, and my radius is 10. Remember what I said, multiplication order doesn't matter, so I'm going to do whatever is easiest. 2 times 10 is 20, and then 3.14 times 20. Here, if I multiply everything by 0, I'm going to end up with a whole row of zeros. So I'm putting 0 as a placeholder and moving on to the 2. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 decimal places here, so I put 2 decimal places in my answer. And I'm allowed to drop that last 0. So our answer is D, 62.8. Question 41 says, if Pete wants to paint the entire circle of his logo blue, how many square inches will he need to cover? Well, he's painting the whole thing blue, so that's area. So area equals pi times radius squared. Pi is 3.14, and our radius is 10. In the order of operations, the exponent comes before multiplication. 10 squared really means 10 times 10, which gives us 100. Now I have 3.14 times 100. Anything that is a power of 10, so 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, there's a shortcut for. There's 2 zeros here, so I'm just going to move my decimal over 2 places, 314. If you didn't like that trick, just as easy to multiply by 100. Again, a row of zeros, and I move on to the 1. 4 times 1 is 4, 1 times 1, 1, and 3. 2 decimal places here, 2 decimal places in my answer. And moving on to our last few questions. Okay, let's look at question 42. 42 says how many 1 2/3 yard lengths of wire can be cut from 25 yards of wire. So I want to see how many times 1 2/3 goes into 25. So this means it's division. We're doing 25 divided by 1 2/3. The first thing I need to do is 25 is not a fraction, so I need to put it over 1. 25 over 1 divided by. The second thing is I can't leave this a mixed number. I have to make it improper. So we're multiplying and then adding. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. I keep the bottom number the same. Now we don't actually divide fractions. We keep, we change, and we flip. So we keep 25 over 1 the same. We change the division to multiplication, and we flip the last fraction. Now you have 2 choices. You can multiply straight across, and you're going to get an improper fraction that you have to divide, or you can look to cross cancel. So I look at this diagonal. It has a 1. Well, 1 can't get smaller, so this diagonal's out. I look here. We have 25 and 5. Is there one number that can go into both 25 and 5? 5. 5 goes into 25 5 times. 5 goes into 5 goes into 5 1 time. 5 times 3 is 15. 1 times 1 is 1. 15 divided by 1 is 15. If you didn't choose to cross cancel, think quarters. 25 times 3, 75. over 5. 75 divided by 5 would give you 15. And moving on to our last question. 43 says, Joan received a discount of $4.80 on a book that originally cost $60. What was the percent of discount she received? By common sense, $4.80 is not a lot of money to save on something that was $60. So by looking at our answer choices, C makes the most sense. But let's say you weren't sure. Always find out what half would be. So we're talking about something that's $60. $30 is half, would be 50%. So if I looked at my answer choices and I gave you a new discount, and let's say I said the discount was $25, I'd say, well, that's a little less than 50%. I'll choose B, 44.8%. Let's say the question said the discount was $35. Well, I'd probably choose A, 55.2%, because it's a little over half. Generally, this rule works. So find half of whatever number we're talking about and compare what you're talking about to 50%. Thank you for watching this, and I hope you learned a lot.